It's T minus 2 days until the biggest moment in all of our lives. It's a day so big that it dwarfs the birth of Christ. I'm talking about the release of Cyberpunk 2077. The second Cyberpunk hits the shelves, a collective peace will befall all of Earth. The coronavirus will be cured. Atlantis will rise from the sea floor so that the Atlanteans may join us in holding hands in unity as we all collectively suckle the divine bosom of CD Projekt Red, and as we accept the sweet, warm nectar from the sublime nipples of the game developers, we'll smile as we look up to the sky and move towards a brighter future and forget the troubles of our past. Thank you, Cyberpunk 2077. So this game's fucking huge, and I've been asked a lot about my opinion on Cyberpunk. Am I excited? Of course I'm excited for the game. I think it looks like it's going to be a good game, but I'm not worshipping it like a lot of Twitter and Reddit seems to do. Before the game even comes out, it's achieved this godlike status where anything less than a life-changing experience is going to disappoint a lot of people. And I think that fucking sucks, because that's a lot of unnecessary expectations to place on a fucking video game. Playing Cyberpunk isn't going to repair your relationship with your significant other. It's not going to bring your deceased pets back to life. It's just a video game, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. I know with the delays, a lot of people have been frustrated. Like the most recent delay, people were melting down on Twitter about it. There were people just fucking scrambling to smash their keyboard like they were just going full fucking caveman Neanderthal mode on it because they were so angry because they were saying things like they took a month off of work in preparation for the game so they could mentally prepare themselves and dedicate as much time as possible to investing themselves into the Cyberpunk universe. Like, that's fucking sad. Being excited for a game is great, but being obsessed with it when it's not even out and risking your career to take so much time off just to play a game and then getting this mad when it gets pushed a month later, that's not healthy. That's excessive. Now, obviously, I'm excited about the game, but I'm not coming in here expecting something that isn't, just a video game. It's going to be a good game, I'm sure, but it's just going to be a video game. It's not going to completely change reality as it evolves around us. We're not all of a sudden going to experience some kind of multiversal collapse where this game is so good we start bonding with 10 other universes to get the best of all the universes and create a utopia. It's just going to be a video game. And I don't think it's even going to be like the craziest video game ever. Like, I know there's penis physics and stuff, and you can customize your dick, which is awesome. I think that is fantastic, but it's only going to be a gimmick. I don't think penis flopping mechanics are going to be integral to the Cyberpunk experience. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to come in day one on Cyberpunk, spend 2.5, 3 hours in the character creator, finally crafting and sculpting my in-game wiener so that it resembles my real-world meat, making sure every single vein is in the exact right position, and of course the length being to real-world specifications, maybe fabricate and embellish the girth on the in-game penis a bit more. But I'd love if I do all that and it actually does play a role in the story, where all of a sudden, let's say I'm at the dinner table and I've got a random boner. I'm there with the kingpin, and all of a sudden I pop the semi-chub, we're having a conversation ends, and he asks me to excuse myself from the dinner table, but I can't, because my character's now popped an erection. So that changes the dialogue and thus the story as a result. He asked me again, Charles, why aren't you getting up from the dinner table? Well, now I have these dialogue options. You have this spontaneous erection. You need to come up with an excuse. Choose from this dialogue tree. And the game evolves around that. I think that'd be incredible, but I highly doubt that's going to be the case. It is, at the end of the day, probably just going to be more of what we've seen before from video games. Just very good writing, a very good universe. It's going to look great. I think the gameplay is going to be fun, but I don't think it's going to live up to these absolutely absurd expectations people are putting on this game. An entire cult is developing around just the worship of this game pre-release. It's crazy to me. I don't really understand why. Now, CD Projekt Red has a great track record. Granted, I'm not a huge Witcher fan, but I understand the love of the series, and I'm glad that people love the company so much because they really do seem to care. I think that's great, but I think it's time we stop acting like they're a celestial game studio that's the salvation of gamers that can do no wrong. They have just the same problems that other studios have too, like crunch, for example. Some employees said they've been in crunch mode for like a fucking year, working 6 days a week, day and night. And they promised no crunch in the first place, but they've been crunching for an extended period of time. But for some reason, I see a lot of people defending that shit, saying things like, they're probably doing it because they love it. They're probably honored to be working on Cyberpunk every waking moment of their lives. I wish I could spend every single second of my life dedicated to working on this game. It's going to be that good. So what if they're not getting the proper pay for the work hours they're putting in? They get to work on Cyberpunk. and just brushing it off like it's not a big deal. Whereas when it's another studio like EA, they're all over that shit and there's outrage. There's calls to burn down the EA offices in cases like that. But when it's CD Projekt Red crunching, well, they give it a pass because they like the games they've made so far. I'm sure the employees hate crunch at CD Projekt Red the same way they'd hate it if they were at EA. It's bad. Crunch is a bad thing. Just because the studio makes good games doesn't all of a sudden mean the crunch is ethical. It's still the result of poor management. Yes, the games are good though, but there's no benefit, there's nothing to gain from putting absolutely unreachable expectations and responsibility on a video game. There's people acting like if this game flops, their life is over. Like everything in their life is coming to a screeching halt if this game happens to not be good. And by not good, I mean not reaching their expectations for it at the unreachable level they've already put them at. I just don't really get it, and I don't think there's any reason to commit so hard to loving something you haven't even played yet and have only seen very little from. I don't think that's should be encouraged. I know online, being a professional fan of things like a K-pop stan or a stan of a YouTuber or whatever is considered cool and trendy, and it's encouraged by a lot of people. But as I've always said, I think that kind of shit is terrible. I don't know why all of a sudden it's considered cool to be a mindless zombie that just parrots opinions to fit in. I think you should definitely wait to play the games before giving them this status of Game of the Year forever, the perpetual perfect game. I think that kind of shit needs to wait till it's actually in your hands and you've played it and can form an opinion on it. But that's just my takeaway. I'm excited for it. I think it'll be good, but I think it's going to disappoint an incredible amount of people no matter how good the game is because it's achieved like Half-Life 3 levels of hype, and that's a hard demand to reach. I'd say it's actually achieved more than Half-Life 3 levels of hype. This is like up there with The Bible 2. Like this shit is crazy with the amount of like responsibility that's being put on this game to improve the players' lives in the real world. It's nuts to me. But I do think the game will be good, and I am looking forward to giving it a try. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah.